Okay, guys, so we're just going to recap a bit of the last lesson and where we should be right now. We're going through the research phase of our investigation. So we want to be investigating and researching about our chosen issue, about our chosen problem. We've all come up with some various plans, and last lesson you mapped out your plan, which now should be in your process journal. And sort of looking at ways, or at least in terms of which community you're going to take action, and how you're going to potentially take the action, and why it's obviously important. The why it's important is obviously going to need us to explore and do some research around, so that we can able to get different people's perspectives. And this is what you started last lesson. So you should have come up with a series of questions. Now, we did the example in class about school lunches, island school. What's the questions we could come up with if we were investigating this as an issue to tackle? Okay, so factual questions were very sort of simplistic kind of questions. They might be a one-word answer, but also you might get an answer in a sentence. Conceptual questions linked to they're usually questions that start with a how or a why. Now they involve a little bit more research, involve a little bit more explanation. Okay, and then we're going to look at some debatable questions. Now, debatable questions are often ones that we might even need to do some primary research about. They're questions that pose both sides of the story. Okay, so you could argue for one side, or you could argue for the other side. So, one argument might say school lunches are healthy. One argument might say, well, actually, no, I disagree with that. They're unhealthy. And it's you guys balancing up the arguments and coming up with research around that. So you should have last lesson at least devised a series of questions. And you should have begun the research process. And we ask you to do this by looking at various perspectives. So we're asking you to look from a global perspective. So remember, that's like a large organization that spans the world. So, someone like the World Health Organization, United Nations, WWF, these are big sort of organizations that have links with multiple countries. A national perspective is linked to a certain country. It doesn't matter, it could be any country, it could be Hong Kong, Afghanistan, America, doesn't matter, but it is national. And a local perspective could be anything from your building to a state that you live in, a city you live in. It is a part of your country. Okay, so we're looking at that from different perspectives. And what we wanted you to find was trying to answer some of your questions from those different perspectives. Okay, and the key thing here was to try and find evidence. Now remember, sort of evidence we're looking for are things like statistics, all right, dates, times, specific sort of measurements of things. We might be looking for names of places, of individuals, organizations, okay? Expert opinions is important here. So we're trying to get evidence that will look into our sort of issue. And we gave you the example here of looking at the ivory trade, okay? So we had our various questions along the top. We then looked in terms of who we were going to speak to in the second row down, and the third row down was some evidence that we found. And then finally, we put this in as a source of information of where we actually got this information from. So we want you to spend some time, if you haven't done that, to finish that off. And you're going to be building on this in today's lesson. The other key area we want you to work on today is actually for you now to start to develop a research question. Okay, and we're going to go through this in a step-by-step kind of process. So based on the research that you've done so far, you've identified a kind of an issue or a topic that you want to study. So you're simply going to write out, I want to learn about whatever you want to look at that. So it could be poverty in Hong Kong, recycling practices, stray dogs. That's what we're going to do. So that's step one. You're then going to take that up the next stage. Okay. You're going to actually sort of talk about, so say I'm studying stray dogs in Hong Kong because I want to find out, well, what are you actually interested about? Okay. And we're going to use the who, the what, the when, the where, the whether, why, or how to actually build on that. And we've given you some examples below. You're then finally going to change this now into going from a statement into a direct question. And you're going to change it with one of the sentence starters of to what extent, how, and then it could be how successful, how reliable, how significant, how far, whatever, or why. Okay, so you're going to change that. So having a developed research question will then allow you to focus your research more clearly. And that's an important part to enable you to actually carry on with your research for the rest of this lesson. Now we're going to talk about in terms of research and what you might look at, and what sort of sources you might use, because obviously it's important that we use reliable sources. Often we ask, can I use blogs? Are blogs reliable? Well, they offer a sort of a personal opinion. However, that doesn't mean you shouldn't use them. As long as we then sort of start thinking, okay, well, this blog says this bit of information, but then so does the BBC, and so does the Washington News. So by those three things sort of triangulating in that way, it is likely that the blog is probably sort of telling the truth, and it's not just someone's opinion. Obviously, opinions are important. So it's good to actually have these, but we must question what people say if it's some kind of random blog post and it doesn't have that credibility or reliability. And as I say, we do that by triangulating information. Okay, so you're looking for multiple sources to cross-verify what someone has said. Now, a good place for you to actually go and look for information is on the search engine called Sweet Search. Now, everything on this search engine has been verified as being reliable. Okay, so it's gone through a whole rigorous process. A team of people actually look at every site and say, yeah, this information is reliable, is factual. Okay, so I want you to have a go at using this search engine. And I want you to find, excuse me, six sources that look at the causes of your issue globally. Okay, so remember what globally is. So what is the issue? Why are some of these issues that you're looking at? So if it's poverty, what is the cause behind them? Okay, so you're going to find various sources, and again, you're going to put them in a table such as the one that you did last lesson. Again, that all goes in your process journal, so make sure you keep it in one place.